Hello, everyone. This was a special episode. I got to sit down and talk to Brittany Highland from Hourless Life. Herself, her husband Eric, and their 6-year-old son Caspian are doing an incredible journey right now, going over all 6 inhabitable continents, and they are documenting it in a beautiful fashion on Instagram and YouTube. It was an absolute pleasure of mine to get to pick her brain, talk about Mexico in detail, get all sorts of really, really good tips and tricks from her that I know a lot of you can definitely benefit from. So please sit back, enjoy this episode. I know I really loved it, so I know that you guys will as well. Does Pour Off-Road Coffee Company make incredible coffee? Yeah, they definitely do. Is Pour Off-Road Coffee Company veteran owned and giving back to that community? Yeah, they are. Is Pour Off-Road Coffee Company part of the 4x4 world, part of the overland community, part of a community that just wants to go outdoors, have fun, get muddy, see amazing sights, and just have a good time with good people? Yeah, they definitely are. So we want to say thank you to Pour Off-Road Coffee Company for being a part of our adventure, being behind us on what we're doing, and sponsoring these episodes of podcasts or whatever you want to call them, and just being an amazing company. It's veteran owned, it's personable, and they make great damn coffee. Yeah, they knocked that one right out of the park. So thank you to Pour Off-Road Coffee Company for being a part of our family.
Awesome. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Oh, I'm so jealous of your background right now because I like it reminds me of Mexico and I'm like, oh God, I miss it.
Not too long, right?
Hopefully sooner than later. I think we're getting close to like just saying, you know what, screw it. Everything's not perfect, but let's just hit the road and figure it out. It's our sleeping arrangement isn't exactly what we wish it would be, and our everything's not going to be enclosed in the back of the Gladiator, so it's going to be open for now, just because of lead times on those canopy campers, and a few other circumstances that were what would be the word, unforeseen circumstances that kind of caught up to us. So, but it's getting cold. We're starting to get cold, so we're like, we kind of got to hit the road like ASAP if we want to get this on the go.
What?
Oh, you're cutting in and out.
It might be it could be the internet too.
Because I could see your lips. I could see the lips moving, and then I heard what, and then that's all I heard. But video wise is good.
AirPods?
All I heard there was AirPods at the very end.
We'll take them out.
We'll try it without.
Maybe that'll be better.
Well, I can hear pretty good now.
Okay.
Sorry, what was your question?
I was asking where you are.
We're just north of Edmonton.
Okay.
Yeah, so our plan was from here up to Yellowknife, across to Alaska, and then back down to Vancouver Island, and then over to Gaspésie, like the inland part of Newfoundland, and then down through Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and then in through the States. But I think we're probably just now with the weather, we might just head straight down to California.
You're hitting the end of the season for Alaska, right?
But if we could leave right now, it would almost be perfect because
Yeah.
there'd be no mosquitoes. Yeah. So, and we were planning on being at my mom's house in New Brunswick for Halloween. So,
Okay.
we're not super off of that schedule. And then we wanted to be in Florida for Christmas.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I think like ideally we figure it out and we're on the road in a week is the plan. Like that's the
Yeah.
But
At
like,
some point, you have to just say screw it.
I know,
And
like, it's crazy because I figured when we were in Mexico and we started planning this at the end of March, I figured we go back to Canada in end of June and we're on the road like mid July. Golly, like,
you were off.
oh my God. Just getting the Jeep was like, start of August by the time we got the
Yeah.
Jeep. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was one thing after another. Now we're waiting for our passports because me and Wilder had to renew our passports. We don't get them till
Okay.
September, like end of September, September 26th or something. And we're trying to get Fox's passport, but he was born in Mexico. And now, like, the passport office has never had that happen before where two Canadian parents have a baby in Mexico. Usually it's one Mexican parent, one can. I'm like,
Okay.
and now they're trying to say like they're my wife went in 2 days ago and she's like, yeah, like she kept like grilling me and like asking, telling me my story doesn't line up, and I'm like, well, like what kind of illegal stuff could we be doing? Like,
Wow.
so,
That's so sad.
but the nice thing is, I think under 15 years old, you don't need a passport to cross on land borders,
Okay.
and he has a Mexican passport, so it's not the worst yet, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you guys? I want to know you. I want some details on your guys' adventure because I'm like, there's everybody that I've talked to so far has had like bits and pieces of things that are so resemblant to what we're doing, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
overland priority with 2 or 3 kids in a Gladiator. Um, just traveling, they're doing the Pan Am, and then you guys are in a Gladiator with your son, and I'm like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
this is just, I need to learn every bits and pieces that I can because I've planned nothing. I'm just like, we'll figure it out as we go, and that's already biting me in the bum. So I guess first and foremost, the traditional podcast question: who are you? Where can we find you? And like, what's the backstory of what you guys are doing?
My name is Brittany Highland, and my husband Eric and my son Caspian, who's 6 years old, were collectively known as Hourless Life all over the internet. So we have a YouTube channel and all the social media and Patreon and all that good stuff. And we have been traveling full time for almost 10 years. So in February, it'll be 10 years.
Wow.
And so that means that Caspian has been traveling full time his entire life. He's never lived in one place before. And in 2018, we were 5 years into RVing full time around the States, and we discovered overlanding. And I automatically thought that that was something that I wanted to do. And we ended up deciding to go big and drive around the world. So we're currently on our way to overlanding all 6 habitable continents, and I'm in Peru right now.
Oh, that's amazing. So you guys were like, well, we're going to downsize our living space from the RV, so we may as well add another human being into the smaller space. And you went Gladiator and Alucab canopy camper, and you guys don't have a trailer. You're not pulling anything. You're just straight up Gladiator. How has that been? Like how how was it from RV to Gladiator, and how has your entire life being contained in the Gladiator gone so far?
So Caspian was actually born into our first RV, which was a big 40 foot. So it was like a bus length RV, which, it's your first home on wheels. It felt small
For
coming
sure.
from a 2-bedroom apartment. But once you get out on national forest land and try and get to some of those spaces out of the way, it starts to feel really big.
Oh, I could
And
imagine.
I was starting to try and drive it places I probably shouldn't have been going. Is what propelled us to start downsizing because we wanted to be more nimble and be able to go off grid. And so we started incorporating things like solar panels and learning how to use less water. And again, it's been almost 10 years. And so we took 7 of those years and applied them into the Gladiator build. Like everything that we knew about living tiny, living off grid, we could apply to the Gladiator. And so we didn't know how it was going to turn out. Our Gladiator's the second model year, and so our Gladiator by itself is super new. And then the Alucab Canopy Camper was really new to the United States as well. So before we bought our Canopy Camper, I think we had seen one in person ever. And so they were super, super new. It's kind of a crapshoot because no one's done it before. You don't know. But to answer your question, everything is going really well. I mean, it's really working for us. And I say that very genuinely. We love it. Like, it's been a really good home for us. It is small. And so mostly it's for sleeping. I mean, it's for sleeping inside and for escaping from bad weather. And like Caspian is hanging out in there right now, having some quiet time, listening to his tablet and playing toys. Like, it's really great for him because he's still so small.
Little clubhouse.
Yeah, exactly. Like a treehouse. But for the most part, we live outside. And so we're cooking outside. Our shower cube with our toilet when we use it, that's outside. Our shower is an outdoor shower. So you have to come to terms with living outside. And that has a lot of ramifications.
How you found it with weather? Like, because you realistically, like, have you, I look at it and I'm like, well, if there's a storm, there's a storm. It's not like we're going to be like, let's not go camping this weekend. We'll just stay in. Like, you got to deal with the weather as it comes. Have you found that to be, like, any kind of adjustment or like scary at some points or anything like that?
Yeah, all of the above. So, I mean, it's one thing when you live in a house and you're going out whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Like you just said, like you pick the weekends with the good weather
Yeah.
or the 2 weeks in, peak season to go. It's also another thing when you're just traveling your country because you can travel seasonally. So when we were in the RV, obviously north in the summer, south in the
Yep.
winter, and we would do that every single year for 7 years. Well, when you're doing the Pan American, you can do that. Like you're going in one direction, you're on a visa, and you have to just take what comes. And we hit Central America last year during rainy season. And rainy season is normally like June to October, but it was a long rainy season. So it was May to November. And I'm talking every day torrential jungle rain like you see in the movies.
Where were you for that?
And we were in Guatemala through Colombia, like all of Central America. Costa Rica provided a little bit of reprieve, but that was the only country where it wasn't raining constantly. And so like all your stuff is wet all the time. You start to grow mold.
Yes.
At one point, the swarming termites came through.
Cool.
So termites mate in the air in Central America. And so we had one day that it was like a swarm of biblical proportions. And we had all of our screens zipped. Like we thought everything was closed and they were still getting in everywhere. I actually took out our hand vacuum and I was like trying to vacuum out the termite wings. It was insane.
Yeah, it's I kind of like when you talk about the crazy jungle rains, I experienced that, but we were living, we weren't in a gladiator. We had like we were in a villa essentially. I loved it because I would just sit on our deck and I find storms so incredible. But like you said, like everything gets wet. And even there, when we were living, we had to have these moisture catching, devices or what have you, because like the mold like I remember my leather belt was in the closet and I didn't wear pants in Mexico and I grabbed my leather belt. All of a sudden I'm like, what's going on here? It's full of mold just from the moisture, let alone if you're dealing with the rain and stuff. So I can imagine that's that's can't be a good time. But you guys made it through and everything was it's an experience lived through, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were in Honduras, we got hit by a tornado tailwind. And it actually took our awning and like snapped it up like a giant had just come along and just like 90 degrees bent the awning. And the rain was coming down so hard that it was standing water in the electrical lines started coming
Sweet.
down, and we could
Awesome.
see the lights were still on, and so there was still power going through the lines, and so we had to evacuate with our tent up. The awning like snapped up. We just shut Caspian into the back, and I had like a bottle of red wine, and I just gave it to him. I was like, hold this, don't let anything happen to my wine. And we like drove out of the field. It was pure insanity.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's one thing that I picked up when we were in Mexico is in these countries they don't have the same codes and the same building precautions and stuff like that we have. Whereas in the States or Canada, if a power line comes down, it's powers off typically. They have safety precautions for that. Whereas there, not the case whatsoever. So those are extra things you got to be careful for. Um, like where so far has been the most amazing place that you've driven through, because and I guess what was your path once you entered Mexico and left the first world country? What was your path through Mexico and kind of to get to where you are now?
So we went into Mexico. Sorry, there's hammering in the
Oh yeah,
background.
gosh, no kidding.
So we went into Mexico for the first time in 2019 for 2 months. And then in 2020, right before COVID, we did all of Baja.
Nice.
So when we started this trip, it was our third time in Mexico, and it was all interior. So we entered from Texas, and we went down basically the middle of the country, and then we cut over to the Caribbean coast, and we did La Huasteca Potosina, which is a region that not a lot of people know about, but it's all turquoise waters, waterfalls, just beautiful jungle. It's incredible.
Wow.
The average American or Canadian does not know that this place exists in Mexico.
And that's on the East Coast?
It's on the Caribbean side. And it goes through 3 states, but a lot of it is in Potosi, which is one of those states. And then we kind of curled around through Veracruz and went up to the why am I spacing on the name of my husband's working right across from me, so I'm looking for cues.
So like up Cancun, like Yucatan. Mayan Riviera, Yucatan, Quintana Roo.
Exactly. And then we went straight down the coast to Belize.
Okay.
So we did Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. And then we had to put the Jeep into a container and ship it across the Darien Gap. That took about a month, 3 to 4 weeks.
Whoa.
And then we were in Colombia for 5 months because we loved Colombia. And then we did Ecuador, including the Galapagos Islands, and now we're in Peru.
That's awesome. And you guys are seeing everything.
Yeah, and the whole journey's on YouTube. And so our next video is about the Galapagos Islands. That's going to be a really fun one. But yeah, it's been a long journey. It's been almost 2 years. So October 9th will be 2 years since we crossed from the United States.
That's awesome. So for us, we're permanent residents in Mexico, so I'm not too worried about that. But how does it work visa wise for everywhere else? Like, are you getting an individual visa for Belize and then an individual visa for Guatemala and so on and so forth? Like every time you cross, you get a new visa. And what are the time frames each place?
Yeah, so for the most part, yes, with the exception of 4 countries in Central America, which is Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. They share a visa called the CA4, and you actually have to get through all 4 of those countries in 90 days. It's only a 90-day visa.
Oh, that's too bad.
So we had to move really fast through those countries, but all the others are individual. And so every border you're crossing, you're stamping out your passport in the country you're leaving, you're canceling pulling your temporary import permit for your vehicle, and then you're going to the new country to get your personal visa for each person, and then to get the vehicle's visa, which is that temporary import permit. And all the times range, I would say like 90 days is a
Okay.
pretty good average for most of these countries. Mexico is long at 6 months for
Yeah.
Americans. But then a lot of them, so you can extend in some of them as well.
Yeah.
But some of the extensions are easier than others. So we extended in Colombia because we were loving it so much and it wasn't very hard to do. So that was one country that we extended in. And yeah, they're all different, but there's a website called Wiki Overland that
Okay.
has a lot of this information. It's not always up to date, so it's always good to check with people who have been there recently, but Wiki Overland is a really good resource.
Okay. And then, so far in your journey, other than the one time, which I'm gonna ask for the story of when you guys um, unknowingly almost got carjacked. Other than that, have there been other any instances like I'd seen on iOverland a few times people say they have issues at the police check stops and stuff like that. Which like have you guys had any issues with either crossing a border, police check stops, anything like that? Like that kind of stood out of like, oh my god, what a headache! Like
We could have a whole episode about safety, security, working with officials. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but we have not had anything happen
awesome.
to us security wise on this trip. We follow a lot of best practices,
Yeah.
and I truly think that that is why one of the things is that we never drive at night.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of bad actors, it's because the road on them, sometimes kids, there's speed bumps, there's potholes, you could take out an axle on some of these things. So it's just not wise. And going along with that, we actually aim to be at camp by 3 p.m. every day that we're driving. And that's because if we get there and we don't like it or we don't feel safe, we have time before sunset to find another place to camp for the night. And we have a lot of situational awareness, and we're just always aware of our surroundings. And if somebody doesn't feel right, we communicate it to each other and we go.
That's been something that I've seen a lot, and especially like yesterday when I was speaking with just traveling, they were saying like if one of us says this doesn't feel right, there's no question, we move right away. And a question that I've been enjoying asking is, what are some of your like you mentioned situational awareness, like some of your things that are not necessarily non-negotiables, but have just become a you don't even think about it kind of practice. For example, Aim, he was saying when he gets to camp, he does a 20 meter, 20 meter walk around of his area, figures out where things are. Yesterday, they were saying, we always make sure the keys are in the exact same place. We pack everything in the vehicle. Just so if in the middle of the night we got to bug out, it's a quick thing. Like, is there anything like that that you guys have picked up that stick out to you above anything else that you're doing?
Those things are all super smart. It's a huge advantage too when you have a vehicle with a pass through where you can get from where you're sleeping into the cab. And that's something that we don't have. It's just not possible to do with a canopy camper. So we have a Garmin InReach Explorer Plus. It's a little satellite device, and we have top plan safety investment for our family. And those devices have an SOS button that you can press if you get into trouble. And they're useful like when you're hiking and something happens, but also useful in other situations. And that is like our most prized item in our Jeep. And so we have like a family emergency word when we're driving that if we need to get out of the vehicle really quickly, like that's the word that we say. I grab the Garmin a way to get Caspian out. And that's just for the scenario that I pray will never happen, and I highly doubt that it will, where someone is trying to take our vehicle and we need to just protect ourselves and our family, because possessions don't matter at that point, but we want to make sure that we have our Garmin so that we can communicate.
No, and that's super smart because yeah, like I had said, so what was the scenario that you guys didn't even realize until after the fact, that you guys had mentioned before?
So we were driving into Medellin, which is one of the major cities in Colombia, and we were in this really congested area. There was a ton of traffic and there were a ton of pedestrians. People were starting to leave work and go home for the day. And people started yelling at us from the sidewalk, indicating, like, they were saying, like, your wheel, or like your tire, your tire. And like one person would do it and we kind of like ignored them. But then like it happened again, like a couple minutes later, until it was maybe like 3 people who were yelling at us. And so we actually got out of the vehicle and we were kind of looking to see, we couldn't see anything wrong. And we decided to look on iOverlander and go to one of the mechanic shops that were listed on iOverlander to check out the Jeep. And when we got there, they didn't see anything. They sent us to a trusted friend, and that trusted friend was like, this is a scheme here in Medellin where the people work together to give the same message to the drivers that something's wrong with their vehicle. And then they tell them to go to their mechanic shop, and that's where they jack the
Get out.
vehicle. And I've learned since then that it's not only in Colombia. I've heard about it here in Peru as well.
So,
And we were completely oblivious.
but I'm assuming you guys didn't. So obviously you guys did this perfectly, but you didn't stop, at any of these people or try to communicate with you. Kind of.
Well, we kind of did, because we stopped after like the 3rd person, and there was a guy there in like those mechanic coveralls, and
Convenient.
he was looking at the Jeep with us, and he was saying like, my friend has a place. And Eric ended up like coming to talk to me about it. And I was like, well, maybe like we probably should go get it checked out to make sure everything's okay. But when we looked for him, he was gone. And so it could have gone really badly because we really were totally ignorant. So we feel like we had guardian angels.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
Looking out for us. The guy like, and we ended up going to a place on iOverlander instead.
So now that this has happened, did you guys kind of put any kind of safe practices in place after that happened to hopefully avoid this in the future if it ever kind of happens? Like,
you learn from experience, right? And so I think we'll definitely be more aware. My biggest takeaway is that I can't trust my intuition, because up until that point, I felt that my intuition was really like attuned to shady situations. And in retrospect, I really feel like I should have known, and I didn't. And so that was the biggest takeaway for me. I don't really know how to apply that in the future. It's like self-doubt. Good strategy.
yeah, like,
but the way is just like, I'm more aware than I even was before.
it's such a clever type of scenario for them to employ, because like that's one thing that I'm not mechanically inclined whatsoever. So if somebody's like, hey man, your wheel, it's doing a weird thing,
Right.
I have no idea what to look for. And like, but just the fact that you guys were like, hey, let's look on iOverland and find, somebody that's actually been, trusted to a certain extent.
Right. Right.
That was definitely probably your saving grace, I'd say. And you were able to learn at the same time, right?
Absolutely.
Crazy. Like, oh, like that's definitely something that gives you the warm and fuzzies, especially if you got out of it, nothing bad happened. Now on a lighter note, what what would you say is in the Jeep that you have put in there, aside from the Garmin in Reach and stuff like that? What is something that you would never want to not have in the Jeep? Something that's a creature comfort that you guys have added in there. Well, I guess that you added in there, and then I'll ask Eric the same question when I speak with him. But what's something that you have in there that's part of your camp setup? Whether it's cooking or even if there's two or three things. Like, what are things that if you were to redo this trip would be in there 100%?
I mentioned my vacuum.
Yes, I
and
heard
that would
that.
100% be one. It's like a running joke, but it's real.
Is it like
I
a
just have
dust
a Dyson
buster?
vacuum. It's a Dyson with the tiny attachment that's like thin,
Yeah.
and I use it every day, every single day. And especially with a 6-year-old, I just don't know what
Yes.
I would do without it. It keeps our space really livable. And then another thing we did is that we don't use sleeping bags
Okay.
because I always have associated sleeping bags with camping and they're
Yeah.
not super comfy to me. So we have real bedding. We have a down comforter and we've since added another blanket and it just makes it really cozy and homey feeling.
And with the alley cab, are you able to just fold it down with everything in there, kind of thing, without having to
We
take it
are.
out?
The thing that makes it the hardest is Eric has like one of those really thick pillows, like a Tempur-Pedic type pillow.
Yeah.
And so that's the tallest thing that doesn't
Oh,
crush.
okay.
But we can still keep it in. It's just the thing that makes it a little tighter
Yeah.
sometimes. But we keep 3 blankets up there and all of Caspian's stuffed animals too. So it works.
What about air conditioning? Have you guys employed an air conditioning unit in there because the weather down there is obviously so much warmer, or are you guys just ventilating and taking advantage of the cool night air?
Air conditioning is really tough for overlanding because of how much power it draws. And so even when we were in giant RVs, we could never run the air conditioning on batteries. We
Yeah.
would have to be plugged into power or running the generator. However, there are new products coming out, I think, since we've been gone in the last 2 years that are a lot more energy efficient. So we don't have an air conditioner, but we do have a heater. And our heater runs off of gasoline. And so it's just tapped into the fuel tank for the Jeep. And it's a Webasto, which is a marine grade heater. And so it's really high quality and heats up that small space super fast.
And so, how often do you use your heater? That's the last thing I would have expected is
Well, you got to
used.
remember the Andes. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
the Andes get really cold. I mean, we were at 14,000 feet at
Oh wow.
Cotopaxi. And so, yeah, that's why we have it. We have it for the mountains
Yeah, I didn't
in
even think of
various
that.
parts of
That's
the world.
makes complete sense.
Mhm.
So what so far? What's the most beautiful place you like? Not necessarily beautiful, but like yesterday when I was talking to them, they said Chiapas. Chiapas was their spot. It was the most beautiful awe moment, kind of like, wow, this is incredible. For you, what would be the one spot? Like if somebody's like, give me your best spot, boom, top of your head, no question.
Our spot is Guanajuato in Mexico.
Really?
So the capital city, Guanajuato, and we stayed right in the center, pedestrian only, cobblestone streets. Went out onto our Airbnb terrace because we rented an Airbnb there, and you just see all the pastel houses rising up on the hills around you because it's bowl shaped. And there's this beautiful theater with symphony performances. We had buskers on the corner, and the clarinet music would come up through the windows every day and it was just magic. It's the one spot that we've said we might retire someday.
Really?
And in 10 years of travel, it's the only place that we've said that about.
That's that. See, that's pretty incredible. Not only that's your spot. It sounds like it's out of a movie, like a Disney, like Coco or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's so far Mexico is leading the way in places that people want to retire, and because for
Yeah.
us it's the same thing. We're like, you know what? That's what made us want to do this traveling. Is people are like, well, why'd you leave Mexico? I'm like, because Mexico will forever be there. It's now I know it's there. It's amazing, and
Mhm.
it's probably where I'm going to retire. But I want to see what else is out there. You've said, a spot in Mexico. I got a spot in Mexico yesterday. Same thing. So it's pretty interesting that this what we're told is this wasteland Western style dangerous place to be is the place where people are like, no, I'll when I'm old and feeble and I want to just sit there and relax, I'm going to Mexico.
Our hearts are in Mexico. We think about Mexico all the time and
Amazing.
talk about it all the time. I keep telling Eric, I'm like, I can't wait until this trip is done to go back to Mexico. So we need to do a family Christmas there or something because I miss it like crazy.
Well, when you guys are ready, let me know, and I'll put you in contact with our lawyer, and she'll get you your residency there pretty quick and easy.
Fabulous.
What was your favorite foods in Mexico?
Oh, chilaquiles are. I love
What
chilaquiles
is a
for breakfast.
chilaquiles? I've never had
What?
that. I
Okay, so it's traditionally for breakfast, but if you go out of Mexico, they serve it all the time. But it's a big plate of tortilla chips, and then they douse it in either red or green salsa. You get to choose, or they do divorciados, where they split it half and half. And then a lot of times there's shredded chicken, queso, sour cream, and then some people add a fried egg if they want to. And it is incredible. I
I,
love it.
I saw that dish one time when we were doing like a parent teacher school thing, and one of the
Okay.
parents ordered it, and I was like, "What is that?" And obviously, I would never remember chilaquiles, but that's exactly what it was. It had the egg on top of it. It had the shredded chicken, and like I was like, "Man, that looks like a breakfast nachos."
It
Like I'm
is
into
so
this.
good.
I like it. Our go to was empanadas and gorditas. I
Heck
love.
yes.
Oh gosh, the gorditas were. We go to a local market every Friday night, and like I went to the same booth, the same little stand, and I was like, they knew me at the end of it, and the gorditas, I'd get three or four of them by the time the night was over. Oh, so good,
Well, you
so
know that
good.
Colombia and Venezuela claim empanadas. So you'll
Yes,
have to let me know when you get to Colombia if they're better than your Mexican ones.
it's hard to say because there was an Argentinian spot, and they claimed that they were empanadas were their thing. And I was like, okay, well, so I had about three different kinds of empanadas, and I didn't know which one was like the authentic one or the non-authentic one, but
Yeah,
they were all fried dough, and I'm like, well, I'm good.
so I'm down.
Yeah, give me some fried dough, and we'll call it a day. But oh gosh, so what's your go-to meal to cook when you're out of the truck? Like you're cooking from the truck. What's the go-to?
So Eric is on keto and he's been on keto the whole trip. So it really changes what we can eat and can't eat. So we don't do any pasta and we don't do any rice, which are overlander staples. So what we usually do is like a steak cut or a and then we pair it with a vegetable like broccoli or something like that. And that's just a go to staple. And then we do a lot of like tacos too. So we'll do ground beef tacos.
Oh, sounds delicious. Um, and then I know our time is limited, but what? How has this been for Caspian? Like, how is he? Like, what's it been for him? What's his like? Is he playing with the local kids that he meets and stuff like that? Like, how's the trip been for him? Because I have Wilder's five, Fox is one, so I'm always curious of how the kids do, what it's like for them, because that's basically what they're going to be doing.
And does not know life apart from travel. And so that's something that makes him really unique is that he's really used to the pace of travel and being super flexible and having to meet new people because if he didn't, he wouldn't have friends. And so he is super friendly just by personality as well. So any playground, he's going up to kids and saying, "Quieres jugar conmigo? Do you want to play with me?" And fortunately, Latino kids are super friendly of
Super
all
friendly.
ages and always let him in to play with them, even when he didn't know Spanish very well, which he's kind of conversationally fluent in Spanish now after 2 years. So that's really helpful. But he started to say, so he's almost 7 now, and sometimes he tells people, I wish we could stay in one place for longer, is what he started to tell them. And we do that sometimes. So we were just in Cuenca, Ecuador for a month, and he had a babysitter a couple days a week who he loved. And he made friends, like some expat kids. He would play with them every week as well. And so we made a lot of connections there that were hard to sever. And it's hard. It's hard to say goodbye to people that you care about. But it's part of the lifestyle. And I think as parents, we are apt to focus on the things that we're giving up or the things that might harm our kids. And we're less likely to look at everything that we're giving them. And we don't weigh those very well, just in general. And so I tried to do that because there are so many positive sides to this lifestyle for him.
Yeah, it's
And as he gets
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, we've also said that once he gets to high school age, if he wants to stop, like if he just needs to stop for high school or for friends, like Eric and I are totally willing to do that.
Yeah.
So as he gets older, he's part of this conversation for sure.
It's what I was going to say is, so for me, I grew up like not traveling, but my father was RCMP, so for us in Canada,
Okay.
it's like a countrywide police, and it's like the military. They can be transferred
Mhm.
all over the country. So I moved around a lot. I never had the same school. I never had the same friends. And unlike my wife, who she grew up across the street from her childhood best friend, still to this day. And I'm like, sometimes I look at them and I'm like, I never had that. But at the same time, I look at what I gained, and it's like you said, like Caspian will go into a park and he'll make friends right away. And it's kind of something. It's a skill that I got from moving schools so much. Is I have the ability and the social ability to meet people and be like, well, we're going to be friends now. I'm here, you're here, let's be friends, let's get to know each other. So that's like the social aspect,
Yeah.
and he's becoming bilingual and stuff like that. Like that's what happened to Wilder in Mexico. Is out of nowhere he was fluent in Spanish because he was going to a little Spanish jungle school, and I was
Beautiful.
like, this is incredible. Like this is amazing, right? So but yeah, I hear what like he's said a few of those things too sometimes, of like, oh, I wish we could do this, or oh, I want to see the snow this year, and I'm just like, it's hard as a parent, but like you said, like, dude, you lived in Mexico for 2 years, and now you're gonna travel the world literally. Like you don't know it yet, but when you're a little bit older, you'll be like, wow, I'm pretty lucky that I got to live this lifestyle instead of sitting in a classroom every day. Like it's a give and take for sure, but I think I'm very confident that getting to travel the world and still, he's still gonna do some homeschooling and learn and stuff like that. But what he's what these kids are gonna take away from these adventures is life changing, I think.
Agreed.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, it's. I know we're at that time limit, and honestly, the amount of things that I want to dive into with you
I know.
is like
There's so much to talk about.
so much to talk about. But the cool thing is you guys are extremely slow in your travels. So there's a chance I might catch up to you guys
Yeah.
eventually, hopefully. Um, and let's leave on, well, first, before my last question, what what do you guys drink in the morning? Are you guys coffee people, tea people, mate people? What's your go-to in the morning?
I drink coffee, and Eric drinks Coke Zero pretty much any time of the day.
Okay,
It's his guilty pleasure on keto.
I mean, you know what? There's a lot of worse things that could be a guilty pleasure. So Coke Zero is probably at the bottom of the list of bad things. How do you take your coffee?
Black.
Okay, the easiest way. And then on your travels, did you find like this was the best coffee I had in this place or that place, or it's kind of been even keel the way
It's
through?
Yeah, it has not been even keel because a lot of these coffee producing countries send their best stuff out and keep the worst coffee in country.
I've heard that.
But I'm drinking a really good one right now that I got in the mountains of Peru in Huaraz. It's very delicious.
I can well imagine they are known for some pretty incredible coffee. Okay, and now the last question. Once you guys hit Argentina, you said you're hitting all the continents. You guys obviously North, South America, first two, and then what's the third continent? Are you guys just going to cross over to Africa, Europe? What's the plan after that?
So we're swinging up to Brazil, and then we're coming back south to Montevideo in Uruguay, and we'll ship to South Africa from there.
Amazing.
And what we do in Africa depend on the geopolitical situation at the time. But after Africa, we'll go to Europe. And then we'll drive across Europe and Asia, and we'll finish in Australia.
I love it. That's been my plan was North South America, and then I didn't even think of Africa. I thought it was too, like you said, the geopolitical situation wouldn't be the greatest, but I wanted to ship to Europe and then drive down to Australia. And so we have a very similar path in mind. And just like South America was added to my path, because first it started Alaska to Mexico, then Europe, and then I was like, oh, let's add South America. So I'm sure Africa will be added in there. But okay, you got to get to Caspian. Thank you so much for making some time today to talk to me and give me some insight. And when Eric's free, I would love to have a conversation with him as well and kind of pick his brain about a few things. But thank you again, and I certainly look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Enjoy that beautiful weather, and we will talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.